too. What? Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. This is Karen Cisse. And if you've been here all summer, you've seen we've done these live stream interviews for Atlanta Film Festival with the filmmakers. Then we had some people come in who are doing creative conference for the festival. And tonight, which is sadly our last night, but not too sad because we've got the big cheese head honcho himself, Chris Escobar, the executive director of the Atlanta Film Festival, here to talk with us about a nice big old kickoff because a week from today is when the festival starts. So Chris is here to tell us everything about what to expect, all the new things, the cool drive-in aspect, the new venues, all those things. And we're going to go into all that in a minute. First, I've got a whole bunch of stuff I'm supposed to read. That's why the glasses are on. Okay, so the kickoff for the festival is at Stomping Grounds. This block's available on our website. I have two panels that I'll be doing. One is an actors panel. We'll be talking to actors here in Atlanta about COVID, working during these times and what to be doing during these times. And also I'll be talking to, well, I'll wait. I'll let you go and figure out, but it's going to be awesome. Okay. So go to the website, atlantafilmfestival.com. Also, we've got the app. So make sure you download the app and all the information will be there as well. This year, for the Creative Conference, the focus will be on the masterclass conversations and panels. We've got Hollywood directors, showrunners, producers, writers, actors, production designers, editors, cinematographers, and loads more. Because what's great about everything being online now is that so many more people are accessible. So we've got a lot of great people in the industry to talk to us about what's going on. So definitely tune in for that. The topics will cover a wide range, including virtual pitching, development, creating family-friendly content, diversity, marketing, digital branding, podcasting, and sales and distribution, just to name a few. So everything looks really action-packed. And to go into all of this detail, I would like to turn us over to the... Always.
And I got to say, thank you for doing this. I was excited because anybody who knows anything knows that when anything worth a damn, Karen Cisse's in. So that at least gets made here in Atlanta. So, I think that's a big feather in the cap for our series here.
Well, I appreciate that. When Justice first talked to me about this, Justice in the background, holding it down with Krupa and Kayvon, but we'll do another thank you to them toward the end too. But Justice first asked me, and I've been involved with Atlanta Film Festival since it was Image, Film, and Video way back when, and have known and met and worked with a number of different executive directors along the way. Yep. How long have you been the executive?
In our in our time,
this industry,
it's like dog years.
It is. And so, what do you think? Because you're really invested. You're invested with the Plaza Theater. You're invested in this community. So, what was your background, and how did you get to becoming the executive director of the film festival?
Okay. All right. This is more about me than I thought, but sure, why not?
Hey,
that's fine. People can't get me to shut up about myself typically, so indulge me then. So no, I went to Georgia State for undergrad and grad and studied filmmaking. So my background is in filmmaking, and I actually started with the Film Society on the board when I was a grad student still. So that was 10 years ago, and it was unfortunately the organization had kind of had the hardest hit of the recession, and so I got involved at a pretty kind of challenging time, not unlike what the kind of world is going under right now. But what was different about it was I approached it kind of much like the first people who founded the organization, which is I'm just gonna this thing happens to be our organization, but I'm gonna think about this like an independent film, and how do we do a quality production and put a good group together that's creative, but we basically got to make this for no money, because that's
Right.
generally what we're
Right.
working with. So, and I was very lucky enough to be able to kind of wave a signal to a lot of smarter and more talented people than myself that got involved on the staff, on the board, as sponsors, as community partners, people like yourself lending their time and talent to, be involved in some of our programs. Um, and just, sticking around long enough has allowed us to, you know, learn from our mistakes a little more and more, hopefully each time, and build relationships that run a little deeper and not just be a revolving door, which unfortunately, gotten to be, a little while. And so, that's my involvement. And what I realized was, what we had lacked was people being involved and staying involved, like regardless of the caliber, because our counterparts in other cities are, just as old, are, have a way more money and have way more establishment, and they had a lot of advantages because they tend to be started by major entities or major celebrities, people who are almost institutions in their own right. And we didn't have that. We're uniquely, there's not very many organizations our age, especially in the film festival and the film support and services and development space, that are truly grassroots and started by the community like we were. And so we're very much a kind of an exception to the rule. Most things like ours would have been gone a long time ago. And so, um, so yeah. So I mean, that's just kind of a little bit about me. And I just realized that this town deserved something awesome, and I had a small role to play in it. And I've been very lucky to, wave the signal, and other people have joined us in that call.
Now, the industry has changed drastically here in the city and in the state since you've been involved with the film festival. Many good things for actors like me who
Yep.
get, studio work and everything. But it's also caused a kind of challenge for local filmmakers with regards to equipment, with regards to having access to people. How do you think, what does the future look like as to how can the Hollywood studio machine feed into the local independent scene?
I will say, I don't think what's happened with our industry isn't that different with what happens in Georgia, which is we tend to be very lucky of kind of having a few variables that line up, and then kind of the growth explodes before anyone's really ready for it, and we're kind of having to react and kind of catch up. It's why it's why we have like our worst problem tends to be traffic, but that's a sign of growth that's faster than you can keep up with. And I think in some ways, the entertainment, on the film and TV side has been a little bit of that, where, there was a lot of hope and potential, and then the reality surpassed what people thought, and I think at a faster rate than what people thought. And so there was a little bit of a catch-up game in terms of having the crew base and having the infrastructure, if it's the production services or if it's the sound stages or whatnot. And then we're sort of catching up with that. And now there's a lot more of a concerted effort. There's a lot more strategy involved, and I think there's still more ahead. But I will say, Georgia is already doing things that most markets are still trying to dream of, in terms of, for instance, the number of sound stages we have, in terms of the kind of training infrastructure we have, not just with things like the Georgia Film Academy, which is there's no program like that, but the way there are others, programs like what the Atlanta Film Society has to offer, what the more traditional 2 and 4 year institutions have to offer, what's been offered kind of more in the private sector, and the number. I mean, just for actors alone, the number of quality workshops and things that that there is to offer. So that kind of stuff kind of comes as talent is here and is around. And our organization has been around almost as long as the film office, which is the oldest film office in the whole country. And so we've seen incredible talent come up through our film festival or through our other programs. And unfortunately, more often than not, over the decades, they reach a certain point and go, okay, well, if I want to find other opportunity, then I got to leave and go to one of the other the major markets. And luckily, that hasn't had to be the case as much. And there's still a lot we've got to do. And I think in terms of your question to the future, I think if we keep making the bold strides we have made with the tax incentive, with things like the Georgia Film Academy, strides that are in part investment, but I think in other parts are collaborative. There's a lot of really great conversation happening out of the Creative Media Industries Institute, for instance, about coordinated strategy, because there's a lot of organizations that advocate for different parts or across the entire industry, from Georgia Production Partnership. I'm really encouraged by very collaborative, very honest conversations that are happening, but with respect to people's different interests and stuff like that. So I think that's really, really positive and encouraging. But I think the biggest and most promising thing is what is really our biggest asset, and that has been true the whole time, but is only becoming more evident in the full value of it, which is, despite the fact that we've, and I mean as a culture and as an industry, have agreed that diversity and inclusion when it comes to gender, when it comes to ethnicity, is a problem, the needle is not moving that much. And by and large, Atlanta and Georgia really as a whole is the solution to that diversity problem.
That's exactly where I was heading next. That was exactly where I was going.
And
next.
so I think that the fact that now only on a national level and an international level, there's value being placed in that. And so, LA and New York and other parts are trying to figure out, well, okay, so how do we get more people of color involved? How do we get more women involved? And we're just like, hey, we got it. Just bring it over here.
Yeah, I'll say this, we can't get political here, but I can't, 2020 has been about 7 years. So I have no idea how long ago, the whole political kerfuffle that went through that put Georgia's film industry right in the crosshairs of a political issue. And it kind of cast a light on the state of it being someplace backwards, where the exact opposite is pretty much true here.
Well, I would say both are true. See, I've said this, look, if you care about any social issue or political issue, Georgia's generally on the front lines of that issue, at least for the last half century, and will certainly be for the next half century. Yes, we were the state that passed the heartbeat bill, which is now gone. We were also almost the first state to have a Black female governor, and just to point to a couple other examples. We're the same state that after the film Birth of a Nation came out, it created the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in Stone Mountain, Georgia. We're also the state where the civil rights movement was born, and then where even like Nate Parker's response to that film was shot almost 100 years later. I mean, these things are not separate, right? There's a reason why so many immigrant communities have a home here. There's a reason why the LGBTQ community here has such deep and long roots, why the Jewish community is such deep and long. Like, these things are not an accident, and they're not. I would love to say they are intentionally created. That's not necessarily true either, but there is at least something in the water here where people know and realize rather quickly that there is a space that they can make here.
Right.
And while it would be great if there was more fostering and nourishment, and I think there could be, and we're starting to get into that. There's at least not as many boundaries and as many, and we certainly got our problems and things to work out. But my ultimate point is, if you really care about these things, this is the front line. And so you need to be invested, and you need to be involved, and you need to be in the trenches, because that's really, if we can make change happen here, then change can happen anywhere.
Right. And what's great is, like we said, here in Atlanta and Georgia, the state is just diversifying too. Spreading out. Yeah. Everyone has a story to tell. And that is where the film festival comes in, is being able to allow for different types of voices. Having done these interviews this whole summer, I have just interviewed so many people from so many different backgrounds with so many different points of view. What's the next level in really, really supercharging, turbocharging, making sure these voices, these projects get out into the world outside of the state, from the state?
Well, I think for one, if we're just talking about from an audience standpoint, diverse voices have always had a place in the Atlanta Film Festival for literally over 40 years. I mean, again, where there's a reason why we were the first to play Spike Lee's work. We were the first to play work by RuPaul, by Carrie Preston, by all these either women, people of color, LGBT, or from the South, which frankly, as far as New York and Hollywood are concerned, doesn't matter what color or gender, they tend to be just as ignored. And so they've had a place here, but I think what would really make a difference is if having a major, elaborate on that. So we're one of the largest cities in the country, and so if a film plays here, be it with the Atlanta Film Festival, be it with the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, with Out on Film, with Bronze Lens, whatever, during a film festival, and has huge turnouts and huge excitement, the industry will pay attention. And if it's a film that's pre-distribution, I mean, that kind of huge response in the several hundreds and lots of social media buzz and all that can literally garner the attention of a distributor and change the course of that film and change the course of that filmmaker's career. And we have the audience that would more naturally be interested in a variety of stories like that. And so I think if we just are willing to kind of get out of our living rooms a little bit and realize that we can be trendsetters. We have the opportunity to be trendsetters, and we have the opportunity to be change makers by literally just watching interesting things and being vocal about it, and making noise about how we like that, and we want to see more of that, and we want to see that do well. It becomes undeniable from the industry standpoint of what they can do, and then money talks, and then they'll start buying films. So that's kind of one of the ways that we individually, as people who watch these stories and engage on social media and all that kind of stuff, can have a real impact. And the bigger the audiences are at our city's film festivals, again, the ones I mentioned and more, the more successful the runs are at art house theaters. And obviously, full disclaimer, I'm the only one that owns one locally here, but there are other art house theaters that are not locally owned here, including the Terra Theater, which is owned by Regal, and the Landmark Theater, which is owned by Landmark Theaters nationally. When films that play at these art house theaters, which are large part what you find at film festivals is art house films, when they do well and perform well, things will matter more, and there will be more opportunity. And we just got made by the Academy, just revised their rules where Atlanta is now one of before it used to be just New York and LA, and now Atlanta is one of just a few cities where a film can qualify for an Academy Award. And that's huge. I mean, we're talking about nearly a century of the Academy's history. That's never been true. It's true now. And it was true with with the Atlanta Film Festival. And then not too long ago, Bronze Lens and Out on Film got added for strictly the short film category, which is great. And it's a huge opportunity. But now we actually have a real stake when it comes to literally the Best Picture category. And so that's a huge opportunity. And so there's some interesting things that it's like, wow, this is a bigger deal than maybe we realize. And that we have an opportunity as different institutions, as members of those institutions, as supporters, as casual audience members, to make a real difference, because there's so much change going on, and finally the industry is starting to look under different rocks for gems.
Right. Yeah. It's so odd because there are so many film festivals that people know that are in smaller, Austin, and it's. What do you think it will take really for Atlanta to not just connect outside, but locally, like people in the film industry and independent film industry really support the film festival? But what is the missing link to getting the, average Joe community to come up? Well, okay, right now everything is a little different, but in general, to get more support from local people who aren't in the industry?
I think it takes consistency of what the experience, and that expectation of what that experience is delivered on and maybe outdone each year. And we've worked really hard to do that. And there have been some phenomenal years over the course of the 44 years of the Atlanta Film Festival, but it hasn't been consistent because, as I mentioned, it's changed hands. Or just, I mean, not hands, but rather, the people involved have changed so many times. And so that's why I say, like, the experience that is around today, it tries to sort of, in theory, build on the things that have been around for decades, and and trying to hold up the really pride points of that legacy. But it's really largely building on stuff that's been around the last 10 years. And so, I think it takes the people who go, again, being advocates, being champions for it. I think it's going to take investment of, again, either time, talent, or treasury. Again, from people loaning their name or their time, or in donating or investing or being a sponsor. I mean, just to give you a point of comparison, I think it's helpful to talk kind of brass tacks. A lot of people, if you don't know film festivals very well, you probably know Sundance, right? That film festival literally has 40 times the money we do. And if you were to look at even a more modest one, like the Cleveland Film Festival, which has literally been around as long as we have, and it's not in a town as large as we are, they get 5 times the attendance, and have 4 times the money. And so it's about, there's got to be investment on every level, and we're very lucky to have the investment we do. Now we have 400 people who volunteer their time, and we're talking, we have some of them are getting into the hundreds of hours a year volunteer their time. That's a serious investment. We've got a growing list of companies who invest their dollars or invest their in-kind services. That's significant. We've got a growing, staff. Like, the Film Society has never had as large of a staff as it does now, but it's also had. I'd say it probably has never had as talented of a staff as it's had now. And I've seen a number of iterations of our staff, and some incredible people. And so it's got to be on all levels. The filmmakers who are from here or have been from here need to get back involved again. The high profile celebrity talent that lives in Atlanta needs to get involved and lend their time. And so not one thing is going to change it. It's got to be all these different things. We're having a growing level of involvement and investment from the public sector, from the city, the county, the state, and the federal government, in a way that we haven't seen ever, at least not all at the same time. And so it's got to be on all fronts. And that's what you see in those the examples that everyone knows of and think of, from South by and Sundance and Tribeca. Everyone is all in, and and so we've got to do that for a while in order for that to become true.
Yeah, I know last year, because I'm a party girl. I love a party. So last year I definitely enjoyed. I know the School Days party. School Days is what brought me to Atlanta. School Days in a Different World is what brought me to Atlanta. So going there was like a full circle moment. But it's like we're at a studio and we're like, oh, this is like Hollywood.
Well, and we weren't just at a studio. It was literally the studio where School Days was filmed, which is kind of a cool. And that's one of the things we always try and do is, we work really hard to find these incredible stories by these incredible storytellers, but we also try and make sure that where we share these stories bring a story of their own and add something to the equation. Like, it would be a lot easier to just have our films in multiplexes where it's this auditorium, that auditorium. It would be really convenient from a logistics standpoint. The reason we, bust tail and take on the challenge of producing these things in all these kinds of different places, and places that are maybe in some ways logistically a little less convenient, is because it really makes a difference to the experience. And exactly like what you're talking about, it was one great example that meant a lot to you and connected with you, and hopefully underlined some of the stories that people have kind of forgotten. I like to say, Atlanta has some of the coolest stories, but it all tends to be kind of overgrown and lost under the kudzu. And so sometimes you gotta get under there a little bit.
And get them under there. Get those gardening gloves on.
Mm-hmm.
So let's backtrack a little bit and go back to, I don't know, let's say March 2020, which I think was 5 years ago. Not sure, but I think it was 5 years ago.
At least.
Right. So the world is changing right in the throes, pretty much the last days, weeks of you all prepping for the festival that was supposed to be, wasn't it supposed to be like, was it the first week of April or the last week of April?
April 30th to May 10th. Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
it was, right tail end of April.
End of April, beginning of May. And there's several, they say the 7 stages of grief, or is it 12? I don't know. I skipped over a couple. What different phases did you go through from, oh crap, are we gonna have to shut this down? Let's wait it out. Like, what the decision-making process? Take us to about, I don't know, June, right? Before official things started coming in for how it was gonna look in September.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the full timeline, but I will say we knew something was up, that something was going to happen relatively early on. And while we weren't rushing with, okay, here's what we're doing instead, because we wanted to be kind of real measured, we were trying to look at things all from angles and trying to be kind of respectful of things. And we thought, okay, if we're going to have to delay, it's going to need to be enough of a delay to give time for us to kind of figure out a new plan, or just not do the festival at all and just cancel and we'll see you guys next year is just not an option. Like that, we were just like, that is not, there's way too many I mean, we were literally going to announce the lineup the following week. So it was just like, so we were like, okay, let's figure out another plan. Let's, start to, and so the first thing we ended up doing was kind of announcing the postpone and new dates. And we were, closely monitoring kind of the situation and what other things were happening, and, staying in touch with all of our venue partners. And, it's, a lot of people don't realize, like, on our schedule tends to be in the ballpark of about 150 different events over the 11 days. So it's a lot that we had put together, and a lot that we were looking at, okay, is this moving? Is this changing? How, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously no one knew how or when this situation would evolve, but, we knew one way or another we were going to do the festival. We knew there would clearly need to be a virtual component. But, what would be the other components was, kind of TBD. And so in the meantime, in early May, the Atlanta Film Society and the Plaza joined forces and were able to launch these 2 drive-in sites that have been happening at the Plaza and Dad's Garage. And that really gave us like figure out all the ways to make that work well. And it's not just from a presentation standpoint, but from a safety standpoint, because we knew it wasn't just enough to be a drive-in. It needed to really be a contact-free drive-in in a way that never made any of the staff or the guests, having a good time. And really, like, you can't be entertaining, you can't have a good time if you're nervous about being safe. And so we really had to kind of think about all the angles and how to make a site that's not made to be a drive-in into a functional and successful one. And so we've had the last 4 months now where these have been running and with no incident, and giving people positive experience and being able to run them efficiently and all of that. And so and it was, as we were getting into the summer, going, okay, it kind of needs to be a sizable window where the situation is improving quickly enough in order for, doing things inside to be realistic. And while that's, kind of came and went, we went, okay, well, we're just going to do all drive-in and digital. And so then it became a matter of figuring out how do we make it all fit and where. And that unfortunately took a little longer than we would have liked, because so many of the places we were talking to had so many different things that were changing on them. And so we have ultimately ended up with 3 great sites, the 2 core that I mentioned. and then Pullman Yard, which we're very excited about having this year.
So tell us a bit about Pullman Yard, how that's all that.
So Pullman Yard, for those who don't know, it's a huge kind of historic industrial complex, kind of on the more eastern side of town. Not far from Krog Street Market or Dad's Garage. Even it's about 8 minutes from the Plaza Theater. And this was a site that had all these incredible old buildings that would work with the railroads. Literally, the railroad would run right up to there, and that's part of why the Beltline is right there now. And they would pull train cars off and work on them and that kind of stuff. So huge buildings, huge property, and it was purchased not that long ago. And the idea is this whole thing is going to be redeveloped into an entertainment making and entertainment presenting incredible facility. They'll have some sound stages. There'll be people can attend concerts and all kinds of stuff like that. It's also been the site of a number of different productions, from Hunger Games to Baby Driver, Bad Boys 3, and others. It's just an incredible site. And so we are very lucky to be able to join forces with them and be able to do what is the first indoor drive-in ever. And that's huge, and do it safely. Again, not compromising any of those things about safety. And so there's one of these giant buildings they have, and we're gonna be able to set up a screen down on one end, a huge 40-foot screen, and have just under 50 cars in there. And both ends will be open, and we'll have plenty of circulation and all that. But being in that space allows us to not have to fully wait till darkness outside, because it'll be darker in the space. It also makes us more resilient and resistant against the weather, which has never really been that huge of a factor for the Atlanta Film Festival. But, in Georgia, that's always a who knows.
Well, September is like cool because it's like it's still warm generally, but not July warm.
Well, and October tends to be crazy windy, which is not wind is not the friend of drive-ins, or at least not screens that you're setting up that are so. So there's all these kinds of crazy factors we've never had to figure. But no, I think people are going to be really in for a treat to be in a place like that has so many stories of its own and is a place where stories are being made. And to be able to, it's a privileged space. It's not open to the public yet. And so, and it's in transition. They're still doing a lot of the kind of infrastructure work on the grounds and things like that. And so we're incredibly lucky to be there. And sort of not too different from, you mentioning, school days brought you in. I could imagine, someone, coming to that site for the first time and 30 years from now going, seeing how it's transformed and being back there and going, man, I remember I came here for the screening for the Atlanta Film Festival and stuff like that. I mean, be part of that story is kind of a cool moment.
So, you have a crazy job. Like, you're one of those people that is always busy. You know what I mean? And honestly, you were one of the first people I thought about too when everything locked down and everything shut down. I think I saw you post something that was just, like whatever on Facebook. I was like, wait a minute, he has time to be on Facebook. Was there a point allocated to this? You know how like if you leave home and you forget your cell phone? Mm-hmm. And there's that first bit of flurry, like, oh my God, I lost it, I don't have it. But then there's the moment of peace that comes, well, ain't nothing I can do about it, so I'm just going to be okay. Did you have that moment at all during this where, there's nothing I can do about it, I'm just going to hang out with my kids, and go hang out, or were you always like,
I don't think it was just one of them. I mean, I did get to see my family, and that was really nice because I don't usually. And
these are the golden years, my dear. You have to keep up with them now.
I mean, my wife usually after like sort of the Christmas break, as we get into January, and they're like, all right, say bye to Dado, and this like obviously like I'm
going off to war, you're packing up your duffel bag.
Yeah, but it's like that's where we go from doing 40, 50-hour weeks to, working 6-7 days a week sometimes is that spring. And so that was weird, but nice in that sense. I would say the other thing was in both the Film Society and the Plaza side, because in many ways there's symbiotes. It's part of why I bought the theater, was to protect the Film Society's interest in the Plaza. The idea of okay, well, maybe this is it, was just not that. It was like, well, let's go ahead and skip past how that's not acceptable and figure out how we're going to get through this, right?
Was that exciting? Was that an exciting part of the process to be like, well, let's see how we can do this. Let's
I mean, like, for instance, like right away, I mean, literally, before Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms made the order to close theaters, and there was all these things about limiting, group event sizes and all this kind of stuff. We're talking about mid-March. I was like, well, maybe we finally do this drive-in idea that we've always been wanting to do, and so it was already about how do we get those gears turning. There are a lot of moments that have been frustrating, when you kind of work on putting all these things together to figure out how to work around issues and kind of rise above challenges. And then there's just like, yeah, no, that can't happen, or no, this, so, but then there is a kind of an awesome payoff when some of these things work. And I keep just honestly getting motivated because of the willingness to work through it and figure it out that I've had from both of my staffs, and I feel like there's been a reciprocal nature in that we didn't lay a single person off, at least not from our year-round staff. We did have to put a lot of our seasonal contractors on pause and kind of figure that out, but none of the employees. We had some consistency, and because the organization, stuck with them and wasn't just like trying to, cut and run on them and go, oh, we just got to save every penny we got and, y'all figure it out. They were reinvesting their time and their efforts and their creativity to think about solutions around this that are above and beyond the typical, job description. So, and in some ways, on the Film Society, we were had the advantage of that we tend to work mostly digital, not not paper based a lot. We tend to even have coordinated work from home days throughout different parts of the year. We already would do a lot, have some people join virtually and other, so in some ways, we were kind of able to jump into everyone working remotely kind of thing. But just like everybody, we did feel okay, when it's been 4 to 6 months between when you haven't had an in-person staff meeting, I
had an audition yesterday for the first time
in person.
March, right?
In person.
No.
Oh, it was taped.
There's no in-person one yet.
Gotcha.
So yeah. We don't have. Look at this. We're already like 15 minutes out, and that's like a hard 15. But everybody, if you're watching, please, got any questions for Chris? You got anything coming up? Because we really do need to sell this festival now and just really tell us all the stuff you want us to know. And let me see. Yeah, we talked about venue.
So for one thing, and this is part of why we've worked so hard to have this drive-in option, is if you're anything like the rest of us, you're sick of your living room, you're sick of Netflix, you're sick of being isolated, and then the only times you're not is getting to go from a restaurant or running through a grocery store. We're realizing now what is something that has been part of our mantra at the Film Society since our start, which is it is in part about these incredible stories and these artists, but just as essential part of it is about sharing them as a communal experience and as a community, and watching these films and reacting to them with people and with strangers and that how important that is in being able to experience this art in such a different way. And we have now gotten to see what it's like to go 6 months without having that, and how even if you're somebody who's gone to the movies less often, how not having that option for that long, there's a void there. And this the Atlanta Film Festival is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, the first major annual event that will actually happen in person, albeit in this incredibly different form. And so if you've never been to the Atlanta Film Festival or if you've never been to a drive-in, I guarantee this is going to be a really interesting, fascinating, fun, different way. And if you're, have been concerned about safety and distancing, this is one of those ways where you don't have to worry. So it brings all kinds of different things that maybe we've all taken for granted, in addition to some incredible films, and in addition to, being in these kind of really cool places.
So what are some of the things that are coming up that you personally are like, I'm so excited about this? What are a couple of things about that? Aside, we've got the drive-in aspect, but what are some of the other things?
So, I mean, for one, I'll start with the conference because that's quite different. It'll be strictly digital this year. But what's interesting is, again, there was a lot of thought put behind the team, and Linda Burns, kind of really leads those efforts, but is going, okay, well, if the nature of how people are going to experience it is going to be different, right? We generally have panels or roundtables or, but if people are going to be watching this at home, what are the things we can't normally do that we can? And the idea and the ability to have more individualized conversations with people and really be able to dive into stuff and where you're not trying to share time across multiple people and really be able to have much more sort of intimate conversations. People are literally mostly going to be, talking from their homes and things like that. So it was like, okay, if this is maybe the first time in half a century we've been able to do it like this, and might not be another time, what are the things we can do? And so you mentioned earlier, we're able to get to a lot of people from across the country, beyond just people who can get to Atlanta when the festival's happening. But, I think the level of conversation that they'll be able to dive into is going to be a real treat. And we've got some incredible people with some incredible credits. I'm going to encourage people to go right to our website and check out the list of panelists, and there are more being added to that. And there's just, I'm really excited about that because that's something that is so dramatically different from what we had planned, and yet is going to be such a kind of a rare gem that'll be amazing. Now,
some of the panels are free, and some of them are like, how does this work for people trying to attend?
Yeah, we've got a mix. Yeah, we've got a few different panels that are free that we feel like are important information everyone needs to get to. But otherwise, panels and the films on the digital side will work the same way, in that for the paid ones, you can basically access it across the 11 days, except for the few that have to happen live. And those are just a $10 or $9.99 to be able to access that over the 11 days. Or if you get the unlimited access, for the conference is $50, for the films is $50. You can get them both for $75. Then you can kind of go nuts and really, if you do the math, you go, okay, well, if I only have to do 6 before before it's a steal. So it's not like you've got to consume this crazy amount of content for it to justify what it's costing. So that and people can do that. They can start right on our site. They can download the Eventive app to their Apple TV, to their Roku boxes. So there's all kinds of ways to get to it. It could be on your phone. It could be on your computer, that kind of stuff. And it works the same way for the films. And there is pretty awesome things in the works for films. I mean, every year we have some incredible stories, again, from women, people of color, LGBT, from the South and from around the world. But what's interesting is the more, and our submissions have grown, and so that means that it's more competitive because we can't play a crazy number more each year. So the caliber of the programming that the team, in some ways, they have a harder job every year because they have more films to narrow it down, and then they're having to somehow pick one film out of for every 5 or 6 they want to play, which is an incredibly difficult task that the programming team has to do. But what's also interesting is there's a whole kind of different on the marquee side. There's usually the films we're able to get to are films that are going to be coming out in the spring and the summer, not a lot of what's coming out in the fall. And so there's a bunch of films on the marquee side that that we were wanting at getting, but because we're looking at releasing in October and November, then they weren't going to be available to us. And so now they are. And so we've got 11 different marquee titles so far. There might be a few added. 10 of those premiered at Sundance. And as far as if I'm not mistaken, we're probably only the second screening since Sundance, which is a cool treat. But I mean, there's some incredible films shot in Georgia. There's incredible films made by Georgia, films from around the world. One film that, especially kind of personally, speaks to me, just because of what I do year round, is Cinema Premiere, which is, and that's PAMEER. And it's about this theater in Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken, and how just they operate and how people interface with this place that's been around for a long time, and I can really relate to that, even though literally it's a different part of the world, and in some ways feels like what the Plaza was a few years ago, and then we've got some really funny stuff. The shorts that we are always a hit. And we've got some incredible blocks that the team has put together. For me, one of my favorites always tends to be the sci-fi and fantasy shorts, which this year is called Out of This World. That's always a lot of fun. You see some incredible creativity and people doing some amazing things that way. But there's all kinds of fun stuff. Again, the thing we always say is we have. Not everything at the Atlanta Film Festival is for everyone, but we definitely have something for everyone. And so, if you want to see some hard-hitting documentaries, if you want to see some heartbreaking dramas, if you want to see some hilarious out-of-the-box comedies, if you want to see, some, inventive different short films that are competing for Academy Award qualification, mind you, in all three categories. We've got that. And it'll be in a way that a lot of people have never been to drive-in. So to not only see these films that you've never seen before, but see them in a way you've never seen filmed, I think is a really kind of cool combo.
So you've been, because I know I've been announcing all of the call for entries for 2021.
Open.
How is the planning process now, looking to the future that is still completely unknown? How do planning for this in a different kind of way, but hoping that maybe things are a little bit different this time next year?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, for us, we work on the festival year round. We've literally been working on the 2021 festival since before the 2020 festival would have happened. And that's not too different. I mean, we opened up the call for entries a little bit sooner than we normally do, but starting to think about what those dates are, starting to think about where this would happen, what are the things we want to do and not do. I mean, that kind of stuff happens right away. And the fundraising starts right away, all that kind of stuff. The way we're looking at 2021 is hopefully the world will be somewhere in between where we are now and back to normal. But if not, we have become more digitally native. We've gotten a really good foothold in this drive-in thing, and that maybe if it's not back to normal, but maybe it's a blend. We have confidence that kind of no matter what the situation is, we're going to be able to put on a quality festival. And what will be different is we won't have to be taken back barely a month and a half away from the event to figure out, oh my God, what would we do instead? We're already sort of working through the different scenarios and the different options. And so with any luck, we'll be able to bring back more of the social component, which is always such a, not just fun, but really an important part of where, artist and audience are able to connect, and where industry newcomer is able to interface with industry veteran, and people and filmmakers are able to meet their colleagues and stuff like that. That'll be something that, will be quite different this year. And with any luck, we can kind of start to bring it back more next year. And, maybe there will be some more component of indoor screenings. We'll see. But we're working on preparing for every kind of scenario, because again, not doing this is not an option. So, whatever we've got to do it safely, where it never, compromises the safety of our guests or of our staff, that's what we're going to work on and figure out. And ultimately, I think the other thing this whole situation has underlined is when a few companies decide they're going to stop producing films for a little while, then cool, now movie theaters have nothing to show. And that's not really true, because again, they just aren't generally looking in the independent places. And so I think it's underlined the need for supporting these resilient voices, these creative voices that aren't only part. There's a time and a place for the big blockbusters, but if that's all you interface with, then you're not seeing the full picture. So
right.
I think it underlined that.
Well, Mr. Escobar, thank you so much. I can't believe this is the longest I think we've ever talked at one time before in the years that I've done.
Might be true.
I had ice cream with your kids last year at the festival for a hot second. But really excited to see what is coming up next week. A week from today is the official kickoff, and it's at, okay, let me put my glasses back on, Stomping Grounds. There is a short that I'd love to promote that I need someone to put in the chat box that we were talking about earlier, Kavan, so that I can promote. But I definitely want to thank everyone who tuned in over the summer for these interviews. I was honored to be asked to do these interviews for Atlanta Film Festival. Again, place in my heart since way back in the 90s, and really excited to see it continue to grow. And under your leadership, it's been wonderful. Around the block. Everyone come see Around the Block. But thank you. Look, I had this. It's Prosecco, but
hey, I love it. Well, and Karen, I have to say on behalf of the organization, thank you so much for lending us your time and your incredible talent. It's such a treat. We all get to see you on screen, on the big screen and the little screen, all the time. But it's fun that people get to hear from actually you and not the characters you're playing. And from having you take everybody through kind of exploring this, because you're close and sort of part of the family, but also just outside enough to know what people don't know. So it's been terrific, and hopefully maybe this will be part of a new chapter we'll get to see in your career, being able to be on in front of the camera this way. So
well, we came up with code words for 2020. And we'll leave the one for texting, but the other one is flexibility. We've got to be flexible now and just open to change, and some awesome opportunities can become available. So
absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. Atlanta Film Festival starts a week from today. Go to the website, download the app, find out all the information. For the last time, thank you to Justice. Thank you to Kevon. Thank you to Krupa, who have been handling everything on all the avenues that this has been going through and making sure that everything went well. Thank you, Chris, for all that you're doing. Thank you to the Atlanta. Look, here we get a little shout out. Atlanta Films, everything. Because we are the city of the future. And, buy your badges. Come on. We want to see you virtually at the festival next week. So thank you so much. Signing off for the last time, it's Karen Cisse. Follow us on Instagram. Bye.